Okay, I just want one more Kennedy question because
I'm a little passionate.
I always have been fascinated by Kennedy. Yeah. Have you ever been to Dealey Plaza? You must.
I have been.
Okay, when you go there,
it's a spooky place.
It's very
so
small.
small.
It's like visiting your old house when you grow up.
Yeah.
I can't believe I lived in this tiny dollhouse.
It's like Legoland. It's so small,
and it makes me think I could have killed him from that range.
You do actually. You absolutely realize that shot is not a big deal. It's so small. It's a very sad place to visit, obviously.
Right, and they seemed obsessed with Cuba, the Kennedys, to the point where it made them maybe make some bad decisions. Or was that just the era? Everybody was obsessed with.
I think he inherited a plan, the Bay of Pigs.
That's true.
He inherited that. And it's that great thing that I think we all have in our own lines of work, whatever you do, where you come in and you're the new kid on the block and you think, well, the experts, they've been here longer than me. The Joint Chiefs certainly know better than I do that this plan sounds good, I'll go with it. And then you learn his famous quote, which is, never trust the experts.
Right.
And he never did after that.
And in all fairness, what he tried to do after that was to pull back the CIA, to pull back those operations.
Yeah, that's why he got shot.
Truman initially had it as an extension of the OSS in 1948.
Don't fuck with the CIA.
War. And he was the only president that ever tried to do that. And since he now is no longer with us,
he's no longer with us before he's not supposed to be no longer with us.
So far out of control and is unaccountable to anybody. So he was the last president that tried to hold those things to account. And
probably true. Yeah. But we have had this embargo with Cuba going on since 1962. That is a very long time to try to get a country to act exactly like we would like them to act, especially since other countries around the world act even worse than Cuba, and we're okay with them. China, the last time I looked, we don't have an embargo against China. They seem to be on every aisle in Walmart.
So these are your peeps, right?
They are my peeps.
These are your peeps.
That's right.
So explain and I mean this really, because it's hard not to see it only as a legitimate grudge, because every other country, China, Russia, whenever you've injected the free market freedoms, it eventually leads to the fall of those regimes. They can't withstand the inoculation of freedom. So why is Cuba different?
Cuba is not different. Well, the reason that it's important that we leave the embargo in place is not because it's been so incredibly effective at bringing about reform. It's because, and I would have said this had I been in Congress to vote on our relationship with China, a relationship with the United States needs to be earned. Cuba is a country that in the recent past and in October itself had more political arrests than any time in recent history.
Oh, you mean like Russia? Oh, you mean like China? Beating the shit out of those Falun Gong members?
Other countries, some of whom are allies, who have a much worse record. You can't say Vladimir Putin is not worse than Cuba. You can't say that Saddam Hussein wasn't worth Mobutu. So hard to
the Cold War has been over for a long time.
I mean, I could go on.
Would you vote to boycott China? We would go under overnight.
I would not have voted to grant
Walmart will go out of business overnight if we boycotted China.
We need to make sure that we use America's leverage to try to bring about change and make sure we pressure leaders like the Castros in making sure
but we're asking why this applies to Cuba and not to these other countries where the situation is
exactly. What did Cuba do?
Every other country doesn't have the same situation means that we should also grant it to Cuba. We have political dissidents who are being arrested simply for expressing their opinion against the regime.
Just like in Russia and China. Stop deflecting the question.
But then why don't we do it? Well, if it works one, why doesn't it work for the other?
By the way,
we've also... Look, I want you in Congress. I really do.
My position has nothing to do about my constituency, because I do not have a very significant Cuban population in my district. My position on the Cuban embargo is one of morality, because we should make sure that we push for human rights. And look, the president has actually
so we'll be friends with the Muslim countries, but not Cuba?
Eased some of the sanctions. And you know what the response has been from the Cuban regime? It's been to crack down harder on political dissidents. Alan Gross is in prison in Cuba for 15 years.
So what?
For the crime of handing out
cell
phones and laptops to the teeny tiny Jewish community in Cuba.
Israel forgave Germany.
What?
Just saying. Okay. let's move on. Let me ask you a science question, because last week...
You got science here?
Yes, I got science here.
Well, it seems to me, and I've been asking this question, ever since Obama got in office. I always thought that we'd start an open door policy with Cuba, but I have no idea who the fuck these people are in charge or why they're still holding on to this Cold War mentality against Cuba. But there are, like here in New York City, there are a couple of educational programs that'll allow educators to sign up and actually go to Cuba as a part of some kind of goodwill tour or something like that, like they do for North Korea sometimes. It's really hard to get visas. But I have absolutely no idea why we're still in a Cold War with fucking Cuba. And I actually lived in China. And China is no better, because if you know anything about China, they beat the shit out of and arrest Falun Gong and Falun Dafa members. And they crush any level of political dissident there. And they do their best to keep the internet locked down and this, that, and other. So why the fuck are we letting China take all of our jobs and all of our money? And meanwhile, we got Cuba right down there, which could be the best vacation spot since the Dominican Republic if these fucking morons would just open it up. That's my question. And Debbie Wasserman Schultz, you fucked up. Your answer made no sense whatsoever. You deflected the question, and you have absolutely no logical reason not to open the doors to Cuba. You have no logical reason. So I just wanted to make sure everybody saw that.